Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this iced gingerbread tumbler. So I'm going to start out by spray painting my base of my tumbler in ivory or a cream spray paint color. And once that's dry, I'm going to mix up about 30 mLs of regular setting epoxy, and then I'll mix up about 15 mLs of the Chantilly glitter from Peachy Olive Glitters. And then we're going to apply it, mix the glitter into the epoxy and then apply the glitter wet. Once I've got my epoxy and glitter on my cup, I'm just going to take my heat gun and run it along where my finger is pushing the epoxy from bottom to top of the cup. This is just going to help any streaking or smooth out any streaking that you may run into when you are spreading that or smoothing that epoxy out onto the cup. And then I'm going to go through with my torch and make sure that I'm popping any of those epoxy bubbles that I may have stirred up when I was kind of handling it a little bit rough, applying it and mixing it. So if you don't do that, it's probably going to come out a little bit foggy. This does tend to stir up a lot more bubbles than it does just applying it with the irregular epoxy method. So once that one coat of glitter and epoxy is fully cured, I'm going to go through and measure out my semi-transparent vinyl. Semi-transparent means that the images, or the gingerbread in this case, are going to be fully opaque, and then the negative space, or the white where you're seeing that white backing, that's going to be transparent, so that Chantilly glitter that we laid on the bottom is going to peek through once you wrap this around the cup. So I'm leaving about probably a ½ inch or so of gapping towards the top. I knew that I was going to be putting buttercream or an icing drip towards the top of the cup, so I didn't feel like it was necessary to wrap it all the way towards the top rim of the cup, and I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of extra vinyl because I do want to put a little design at the bottom of the tumbler since I wasn't able to fully wrap this around the entire cup. So I'm just realizing that I didn't tell you guys where I got this vinyl from. This is from Create by Firefly. She's got a ton of amazing prints. I do have a discount code with her. It's Mitten 15. I will link the link to the vinyl that I used in the description, and I'll put my code down there as well in case you want to use that. Now that I've got the vinyl fully wrapped onto my cup, I'm gonna go and mix my epoxy for my icing or my buttercream frosting drip. I'm just using 15 mLs of part A and part B, 30 in total. And then I mix that fully before I mix in my nice and thick powder from Counterculture DIY. There's no specific measurement for this nice and thick. I just kind of add it until it's the consistency that I like. I use a popsicle stick, and I would say it's probably about a teaspoon or so. Each scoop that I'm taking onto my popsicle stick is about a teaspoon. And you'll see once I'm starting to add that to my epoxy that I use about 4 teaspoons to begin with. And then I add another 3, so 7 teaspoons in total to the 30 mLs to get this thickness of the drip. And then I also forgot to tell you guys that I added ivory paint. It does look super cream colored, I guess I would say. And I know from using this in the past that adding the nice and thick is going to lighten up the color of that acrylic paint that I added, so I wasn't too worried about it being a super yellow tinted drip. Once I added that powder, you'll see it kind of mutes it out. It is like a white based powder, so it does help to tone that color down in the paint. And I will definitely recommend that you mix the nice and thick into your epoxy very slowly. It does create a lot of bubbles if you're mixing it quickly. And because it's such a thick consistency when it's done, it does tend to trap those air bubbles. So just be careful, mix very, very slow, and you should be good to just pop them with a torch very lightly once you get it applied towards the cup. Okay, so I know I look like I'm just playing with the epoxy at this point, but there is a method to my madness. This nice and thick tends to get a little bit clumpy, and the powder turns into like little beads or little balls of epoxy mixed with powder. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm basically just taking my epoxy and smushing it against the walls of the cup with my popsicle stick, just to make sure all of those little beads of the nice and thick are flattened, so I don't have any lumps when I apply the strip to my cup. Once the epoxy is at the consistency that I think I'm gonna want, I just take a little bit on my popsicle stick and I run it along the rim of the plastic cup that I mixed the drip epoxy into. I don't put it on my cup at first in case it's not thick enough yet, but as long as it's good to go, then I add it to my cup. I do scoop it out and I kind of twist my popsicle stick, or in this case my metal stir stick. I twist it so there are no little strings that are hanging down. Those are a pain to get off of your cup if you do get like little stringies when you're applying the drip. So just if you spin it around, it completely prevents that from happening, and then you just don't have to deal with cleanup to begin with. I'm just taking my heat gun and I'm trying to smooth out the drip that we've got going on here. It was a little bit thicker than I thought it was, so I'm just taking that and heating it up a little bit and then tapping it on my table to move that drip downwards towards the bottom of the cup. And then the torch that I'm just using it very lightly. It's very easy to cause the epoxy to run a lot if you use a torch too heavily. But I'm just using that to smooth out the epoxy and pop any bubbles before I'm going in to apply my sprinkles. And here I'm going in with this reusable popsicle stick. I got this from CC DIY. I think they're like $2 or so, but this was really great at helping smooth out that drip, more so than the wood popsicle stick did. It's just a smoother surface, so that helped a lot once I heated that up a little bit. And once I got that smooth, I was happy with it, and I went in with my sprinkles. Whenever I'm doing a drip cup, I always like to go in with a baby wipe once the epoxy is applied but still wet, and I expose a tiny little bit of the rim of the cup just so there is a little bit of something for the epoxy to adhere to once we apply a coat over the drip, and also to wipe away any of the excess that is on the rim of the cup that could prevent the lid from laying flush towards the cup. I'm just laying down these sprinkles from Peachy Olive Glitters with my little tweezers. I do have a discount code with Peachy. I forgot to mention that when I was telling you guys about the glitter at the beginning. That is code Mitten10 for 10% off. I will link the sprinkles and the glitter in the description box, and I'll include my code as well in case you forget that. But I'll let this run through. I'll just apply this glitter, nope, not glitter, sprinkles, and then let it cure, and then we will go in with the epoxy. I let that drip cure for several hours, and then I went in with my coat of epoxy. I applied the epoxy to the drip first, and I made sure to focus on the bottom of the drip, and I'm just really trying to get my finger in the drip so I can pull any of that epoxy puddling away from the base of the drip. It does tend to pool up and it will gather a lot of micro bubbles. Those are really hard to pop when it's really thick like that. So just make sure you're working that out of there. And then once I had the drip epoxied, I went in from the base of the drip, if that makes sense, to the bottom of the cup. I left the actual drip itself alone because I had already taken care of that part, and then I just smoothed it from top to bottom. This took 2 final coats of epoxy and then it was done. If you guys liked this tutorial, give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and turn the bell on for notifications. I post tutorials every Saturday afternoon. If you would like to join my Facebook group, that is Mitten Makers. I will link that in the description box, and I will see you guys next week.